Me on the air.
I always cry even though it isn't allowed. So proud.
You make me want to be a better screamer.
A better screamer.
No, definitely not that. Do you need adversity to be great?
Your skill is you tee up your guests and you make them look, so good.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Gets me all fired up, man. Such a good interviewer. I'm ready to go. Jump through the screen. But no, so true.
They can't see I'm dancing by myself.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
Well, whilst I have trimmed my beard, my guest today, Jeff Gothelf, and here's what I just learned about. I was like, I just want to make sure that I can pronounce your name correctly. So he said it's like 2 words. It's like Gothelf. So I was like, oh, you mean like got milk? And he was like, I've never heard that before. So we learn something new all the time. But I'm learning a lot about Jeff. One is, well, he speaks Hebrew fluently and I speak Hebrew terribly, but it didn't help me, or didn't prevent me, I should say, from putting it on my LinkedIn profile, because I'm like, damn, I don't speak any languages. I speak English, Afrikaans, and Hebrew. Afrikaans, the original language of the National Party oppressors. I don't want to speak that language growing up as a kid. And Hebrew, well, you know what? I can get by to be able to tell the bus driver in Israel to stop. The word is atzor, atzor. And they drive like maniacs. So, oh yes, remember buses. I remember buses. Let's get on buses again one day, shall we? Anyway, I hope you guys are well. Excited to talk about Jeff. What a great book he's written, Forever Employable. We have to start thinking about that. I could talk about that for days, for hours. So interesting. But instead, I'm just going to say a few hellos to people, to Bob, who said short beards rule. I'm trying my best, my friend. My buddy Joey Dumont is here. Of course, Joey was a fantastic guest last week. And Michelle Stearns is back. Hello, Michelle. Welcome back to the show. I'm glad that you are with us today. We've got a great show for you, and I can't wait to get going. But first, I should just say, thank you to Stephen Colbert. I'm actually upstairs right now in his studio. He loaned me his studio, The Late Show. Again, no one was here to greet me, so I had to kind of shimmy my way in. It's a little bit deserted, a little bit weird that it's so quiet here, but I do want to just thank all of my celebrity friends for being so generous and graceful in terms of allowing me to use their studios while they're sheltering in place and sheltering at home. So that was very nice. I appreciate that. Well, today is National May Ray Day. I mean, what the hell is May Ray Day? Well, Ray Day. Ray Day is the day when we call everyone Ray, especially people whose names are Raymond or Ray. So whether it's, Raymond Goss or Ray Melmond, I'm just going to say, hello, Ray. Happy National May Ray Day. There actually really is a thing. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what it means. But just go ahead and call everybody Ray. And maybe Ray represents a ray of sunshine. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe it's about us being happy and positive, or not. I don't know. I'm not really sure. So anyway, Tanya, wow, she was incredible yesterday. The art of surprise. I learned so much, not only from her session, but from the Zoom after show. And the Zoom after show is our best kept secret. So now, instead of inviting you to come to the Zoom after show, I'm telling you, please don't come to the Zoom after show. It's too good. We don't want to ruin it. We don't want to spoil the little intimacy of it. It's so special. So don't come. But don't really, seriously. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. So, did I mention, by the way, that on Thursday is an episode of Corona Cocktails? So Jay Bear at 6 p.m., not 5, but 6 p.m., Jay and I will be sitting down with adult beverages, talking, laughing, ranting, raving, getting a little bit too loose, but it's going to be awesome, and I can't wait to have him in the studio. So as I mentioned, I've got Jeff Gothelf, who is in the green room right now, And, you know, who is Jeff? Well, you're going to find out exactly who he is. He's in design, he's in product design, he's in UX, he's in agile, he's in the lean space, he's in customer centricity, but he also writes magnificently well. And he's featured in my book. In fact, on page 104, where he wrote this fantastic article, scathing article on GE. And let me just give you a little bit of perspective on what that article was about. You know, he was basically saying, in fact, I'll read you the little excerpt. He was saying, don't blame. So GE was one of those large companies that embraced the whole lean startup and the whole lean and agile process. And it didn't exactly work out for them using the process, but in general, GE has had and continues to have major management and leadership and organizational issues. And what Jeff actually wrote is, and I thought it was quite brilliant, and he said, look, he said, if anything, it's a magnifying glass that reveals antiquated planning practices not suitable for a software-driven world. So in other words, don't blame lean and the lean startup for GE's woes. If anything, all it did was just kind of magnify and isolate. You know, there's that old saying, people rise to the level of their own incompetence. And so in many respects, what it did was it just further amplified the inadequacies and the dysfunction within the company. And I was very impressed by that article. So happy Facebook birthday today to, you know who you are. If you're out there, Alan Gaffin, who's in New Jersey and on LinkedIn as well. Happy birthday to you guys. You know what I just realized? That these are yesterday's birthdays, because Richard Owen's birthday was yesterday, the same day as my daughter. So I think I'll just have to tomorrow mention today's birthdays tomorrow, as well as tomorrow's birthdays today. You know what I mean? My article this week in my newsletter, The Juice, was called Generosity, the New Superpower. It's an idea or a thought that actually came to the forefront through the show and talking about these new superpowers. What started out as patience or endurance, I said that was the new superpower. But now what I realize, it's actually generosity. And this is not an either or, it's actually an and. So these are the character traits now that will, I believe, create or be responsible for success. If you want to get my newsletter, which comes out for the most part every week, all you have to do is text the word CoronaTV to 66866. If you're in North America, and if you're outside of North America and you do want to subscribe, just go to my website, josephjaffe.com, and there should be a little pop-up that allows you to subscribe to the newsletter. But I just want to go back to this idea, because I think, you know, we human beings tend to actually have very short memories, whether it's stubbing a toe and, you know, not being able to walk properly, or cutting our baby finger on a paper cut and suddenly not even being able to tie our shoelaces, and we say, I will appreciate my 10 fingers. I will never ever take them for granted. But of course, the finger heals and we forget. And my big fear, as you know, has been, what if we forget? What if we don't? What if we actually go back to our old bad habits, etc.? It's the reason why you need frequency in advertising, because again, we forget, especially advertising that is boring or not memorable or uninspiring or underwhelming. So we just need to keep reminding people. But one thing I think is that we are not going to have short memories when it comes to the people and the companies that had our back. They didn't just say, how can I help? They helped. They actually helped us. They followed through on their promises. They weren't empty promises. And so what you give now into the world and into the universe and into society and into community, you will get back in multiples. You can take that to the bank. I believe it. You should believe it too. Generosity is the new superpower. I've also been experimenting with LinkedIn polls. So LinkedIn has polls now. And I asked this question about a week ago, which is, which scenario best describes what life will be like when we come out of this, right? Business as usual, a new hygiene reality, or permanent disruption and changes? And, you know, take a few moments to think about what you would have voted on this poll. And you could still go and vote on this poll. You'll find it on my LinkedIn. But these were the results. And I wonder if you are surprised, right? Tanya yesterday taught us or told us about surprise. 6% said business as usual. So whether we have short or long memories, nobody believes we're going back to the old way. 40% said a new hygiene reality, and a whopping 54% of people said permanent disruption and changes. Wow. Now look, you can look and say post 9/11, right? TSA, the fact that we went through all these X-ray detectors and had to show our ID and take our shoes off and our belts off and get patted down, that is part of a permanent disruption and change. But I would rather call that a new hygiene reality or a new security reality. It's interesting that over 1 in 2 people believe that the changes are going to be profound and permanent as well, and they will be disruption based, not tweaks or incremental changes, but indeed exponential ones as well. I'm definitely having fun with those LinkedIn polls, and I'm going to do a few more in the future. Well, that's the pre-show, if you will. It's now time to bring on my guest, to bring on Jeff Gothelf, Got Milk, as well. Bob continues to give us hashtags. Generosity is the new superpower. Well, the problem with that hashtag, Mr. Farnham, is that would be a bugger with respect to Twitter, even at 280 characters. But I'm glad you agree with me as well. So without further ado, let me bring him on, Mr. Jeff Gothelf, Got Milk. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe, it's great to be here. Thank you for reminding me of my childhood. Every time you say "got milk," I appreciate that.
and of course, being born and growing up in Israel. That's another aspect of your childhood.
They didn't say that in Israel, as you can imagine. Once I moved to New York, yeah, it was pretty regular for a while.
And by the way, I mean, when we think about lean and agile and innovation and startup nation, and also Israel being smaller, I spoke about an article a couple of weeks ago that actually indicates how the smaller countries have been better at dealing with COVID-19 and managing their people and coming out of this. And Israel certainly has been one of those countries. I wonder how much of it came down to size versus the way that the government runs the country versus just this, this lean and agile, this commitment, this understanding, right, in Israel that the only constant is change and just dealing with that as business as usual, right?
It's super interesting to watch how every country's dealt with this. I live in Spain, and the situation here has not been great. It's been really bad, actually. And after Italy, it was pretty much the second worst, and then became the worst for a while in Europe. We're in a much better place right now, and so kind of listening and hearing how the smaller countries, especially Israel, super interesting. The Netherlands, there's almost no shutdown. Sweden, basically no shutdown. Right, super interesting to see how they've managed this, whether it's been through science, through technology, or simply a belief in the population, right? So whereas in Spain, and there's a lot of kind of jaded attitudes towards the government, the further north you go up in Europe, there's a lot more trust in the government. And when the government says, listen, stay home, they're like, okay, I'm gonna stay home, right? Israel, mixed bag there. Technology helps. Like you said, there's a bit more of a governmental push kind of top down, but it's been super interesting to watch, especially from here where the situation was less than good.
And obviously when we talk about size, very relevant, with respect to the idea of built to suck and these large corporations, very relevant when it comes to this idea of moving quicker, failing faster, which again feeds into the whole lean and agile movement. I live in Connecticut. Connecticut tomorrow will become the last state in the union to open up. The last state, Connecticut being one of the smaller states as well. And I wonder whether, in fact, when we think about size of government or even size of states, the inconsistency that we've had in the US in terms of being able to manage this as one, speak and act and walk and talk in one voice. So that's also been a very interesting kind of juxtaposition of a different attitude and a different behavior and a different action.
There's a tremendous benefit to being smaller, that's for sure. And it's one of the things that I've been teaching companies for years, right? The smaller the teams, the smaller the decision-making chain, the easier it is to make those decisions, the easier it is to adjust, to learn, to change course. So if you're New York State, for example, you got tens of millions of residents, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get that entire population to turn and do stuff in any kind of consistent pattern. Whereas Connecticut, what's the population? 5 million?
Roughly? I should ask Larry.
I grew up in New Jersey. It was about 7 million, right? So Connecticut's probably 4 or 5 million, right? Somewhere around there, something like that. So again, getting a population of that size, which is a similar size to Denmark, right? The Netherlands, New Zealand, getting them to do stuff is far easier, right? It's a much more agile size. It's a much more manageable population size, and so that's a win if you're trying to affect behavior change.
I would have thought that somebody watching today would have helped me out and post it or paste it in the comments. Thanks a lot, guys. What do I ask of you? Nothing, nothing. But occasionally, you could just give me a freaking, the number is 3.5 million. Oh, thanks, Michelle. Now that you did that, and look what happened. Suddenly, I'm exploding.
You got a 10.
Well, I'm about to. Everything just went crazy. The green screen disappeared. That was hilarious. Let me see. This is what's called a bad hair day. Let's see.
It looks like
let's see if we can get back there. Isn't that crazy? What just happened there?
Yeah.
Let's switch it off. Let's bring it back. You're just gonna have to deal with me looking. This is hysterical. All right. You know what, Jeff? I'm gonna do is I'm gonna figure out how. This is hilarious. I love it. Okay. You know what? If you can't laugh at yourself, then who else is gonna laugh at you?
That's right.
So I'm just gonna do this. So Jeff, you're gonna do the rest of the show like this, my friend, as I try and figure out how the hell to get my color back. I can't even look at myself. This is hysterical. So I'm just going to do it like this. So Mr. Jeff Gothelf, consider me the voice of God above you right now, talking at you and down to you. I got to tell you, I'll come back and I'll take it. I can handle it. I got to tell you that I felt very, very strongly when I wrote Built to Suck that there is something wrong in corporate America, that we do not treat our people well. That with all the loyalty in the world that they've given us, our parents would have been lifers. They would have got their retirement party. They would have got their gold Rolex. They would have been treated as well, by the companies that they dedicated their lives to. And now, when the going gets tough, we whack them. We just cast them aside. We kick them to the curb, and there's zero loyalty right now. HR departments have become like henchmen. We used to trust our HR department, and now we see them coming and we just run a mile. When you look at your career, and I will make it full screen as I try and figure out how to get my color back. Talk about how your career, how you experienced maybe what I was talking about, and to what degree that kind of informed and became a muse or an inspiration for you to kind of write this book.
Yeah, so I've never experienced corporate loyalty, company loyalty to me. It's interesting, I was thinking about this just earlier today. My best friend, his father worked for DuPont for 40 years. 40 years. I mean, that doesn't even seem real to me, that you could work at the same company for 40 years. And in my career, it's always been one thing after another has disrupted the industry, whether it's been the .com crash or recessions or pandemics or whatever it is. And there's rarely any kind of, there's never really any kind of corporate loyalty. And for me, that became a real issue as I started to build a family and a career. And just despite kind of, .com crashes and recessions and that type of thing, continuing to find work, continuing to stay employed, but always doing that chase, that chasing the next gig, right? So rushing to get my resume in place, rushing to post it, applying for jobs, interviewing, hoping that I get it, not getting it, being disappointed, getting a slightly better job title, slightly more money, maybe it's a lateral move, maybe it's a good place to work, maybe it's not. And I hit a point actually where I recognized for myself that this was not how I was going to continue and grow and be successful in life professionally and personally. It happened on the day, the realization, kind of the epiphany happened on the morning of my 35th birthday. Morning of my 35th birthday, I woke up in a cold sweat, recognizing that, which is funny to think about it now, obviously, but at the time I was like, in 5 years, I'm going to be 40. I'm going to be 40. I'm going to be old. I'm going to be overpaid, and I'm going to be unemployable. It's funny to say that from that side of 40. From this side of 40, 40 doesn't feel so old anymore. Feels kind of cool. I'd be happy to be 40 today. But nevertheless, that was the realization. And I realized because, my salary requirements were going up and the available positions for me, the further up the pyramid you go, are decreasing, and there's no loyalty, and there's constant disruption and change in the industry. And so I decided on that day that I was no longer going to chase jobs. I was going to have jobs find me. And that was an epiphany and really helped me focus the next 12 years of my life, kind of leading up to today, on how to start to build this platform around myself, how to establish myself as a recognized expert, and how to start to really create these opportunities for work to find me, not just and it's been a long haul, but it started to pay off. And over the last few years, people have asked me, how did you do it? How did you build your way up to this point where you're self-employed, writing books, giving talks, working with clients, that type of thing. And so that's what the book's about. You did it. Nicely done.
I didn't know what I was doing there. But you were doing such a good job, and I was like, I don't need to continue. I'll just keep on trying to figure out whatever. So note to self: never ever put your phone to your camera, especially when dealing with a green screen. So anyway, it's back.
Huh? It's a good lesson. I didn't know that.
It totally just spazzed out. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it's back as well. So anyway, thank you, Michelle Stearns. No, I'm joking. It was fine. So let's continue this thread for a second. And what I will do very quickly is put your book on the screen. It's called Forever Employable: How to Stop Looking for Work and Let Your Next Job Find You. Because I have to tell you, and I know we're talking about this today, that this is an important point right now. We cannot allow companies to beat us up, to beat us down, and to dictate our future. Because right now there are many people at home, too many people at home, and they don't know if the furlough will be permanent, or if the furlough will turn into being laid off, or maybe they are laid off already. It's so funny. Marcy Masura just said, I will just buy the book now. So you've made one sale at least, Jeff.
Thank you, Marcy.
Well, and so before we get into it in more detail, something caught my eye, Jeff, which is the book is 77 pages. And I love that. And I thought to myself, my books, I tend to write 300-page books, and they're 400 pages, and then I have to figure out how to cut them down, and I feel like I verbal diarrhea everything into these books, but I want to give everything of myself. And then you look at a book like The Tipping Point, which truly could have been a tweet. The simplicity, the elegance, the succinctness, the succinctity, which is not really a word, of being able to and look, in fairness, you could probably do that with Built to Suck as well, which is give the elevator pitch in a tweet. But I love the fact that it is a business book or a personal development book that is, and I mean this as the ultimate compliment. It's like a short story versus a novel. Talk about that conscious decision to less is more, to subscribe to less is more.
Yeah, so it's a really great observation, and I'm really glad you asked the question. So much has gone into that decision, not the least of which is that this is my fourth book, and I've written, first book was about 200 pages, second book 250, third book was 40 pages, and then this one is roughly about 80, like you said. The interesting thing here is, look, what I've learned is that a shorter book will get read. People will actually read a shorter book. Everything that I put into the book, it's just enough to give you what you need and nothing more. I mean, certainly, I could have stretched it out, but there was no requirement on me to stretch it out. I found it hilarious, actually, when we signed our contract to publish our second book. The second book is called Sense and Respond, and it was published by Harvard Business Review Press. And when we signed that contract, there was a minimum book length on it. It had to be a minimum number of pages, which to me felt ridiculous. Like, if I didn't need 250 pages to say what I had to say, why would you publish 250 pages? It felt like waste to me. And so there's an opportunity here. Look, I focus very, very explicitly on my reader persona. I want to make sure that they get value out of it. I want them to read the book. I don't want them to skim the book. I want them to actually read it. 77 pages, or the audiobook is just under 3 hours. It's about 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 40 minutes, right? You can knock it out on a nice Saturday morning, and then you can pass it on. And there's to me there's a directness to it that doesn't mess around, right? It tells my story, so it's super interesting to me because it's the first book I've written that's actually been about me. It's semi-autobiographical from the day I turned 35 to basically today. It's very clear about who I was, what I was looking to do, what I was trying to do, what I tried, what worked, what didn't work, what I learned, and what you can do with that information. And 77 pages is it. Right. I mean, look, to your point about it being a tweet, sure. Learn how to write. There's the tweet.
Yeah, but it's
right?
it's so much more than that. And by the way, don't join us for the after show where Jeff won't tell circus stories and his experience with the book publishing industry. So don't or do. We're actually inviting you clearly to join us in the Zoom room, bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. Jeff, just to kind of close the book on this part of our conversation, I love the directness. I love the fact that you can sit down in one sitting and get smarter, how this can be valuable. I think for anyone sitting at home right now, if you are inspired, if you have the opportunity, if you have the time right now to write and self-publish yourself, you can produce a short story. But a short story can be the most compelling story of your life or somebody else's life. So I love that. Now, Jeff, let's get into the meat. And there are three, I think, whats, and then there are three hows that we'll talk about in terms of becoming forever employable. And I just really, really loved these points. The first is treat your career and personal development as a product or service. So in other words, I guess you're telling people to become product managers of themselves. What did you mean by this? Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. So this to me, and this was a really important part of the book for me because I've been writing, business and technology books, and this doesn't feel like a business and technology book. It's forever employable, but this is the foot that's in that material that doesn't make this book such a sharp left turn of content from my previous work. What I mean by this is that if you think about building a product today, a digital product, which is where my expertise and experience lies, you think about a few things. You think about the problem that you're solving. So what problem are you solving? Who are you solving that problem for? how you'll solve that problem, and most importantly, how you'll measure the success. How do you know that you've actually solved the problem for that person, right? And that's true of any banking application, mobile apps for your car insurance, whatever it is, right? If you think about your career the same way, you could ask yourself the same question, right? What problem am I solving, right? So what is it that I'm particularly good at and helping people do? Who am I solving that problem for? Is it specific companies? Do I solve it for big banks? Do I solve that problem for plumbers? Do I solve that problem for freelance writers, right? And then what can I do for them? Well, here's what I can do. There's a variety of ways to do that. And then ultimately, and this is by far the most important thing, is how do I determine the success, right? How do I know that I've helped people? And you know that you've helped people when they change their behavior. Too many people focus on producing the artifact. Hey, I wrote a book, right? Or I made an online course, or I made a video or a podcast. Terrific. Did anybody read it? Did anybody listen to it? Did anybody recommend it to a friend? Did you get one more listener this week than last week, right? That's the true measure of success and traction. Did you get people to change their behavior, right? How many inbound leads for work did I get this month versus last month, or this quarter versus last quarter?
But it's
right? To me.
No, I was going to say it's your experience on the product side that you're actually thinking of metrics and accountability and product releases and 1.0 and 2.0 beta and I think that you hear, I've never been a huge fan of all this mumbo jumbo about personal brands, like become a personal brand. We're human beings. We're trying to make a living. We're trying to make a life. But I do like the idea of thinking of ourselves as a product or a service and packaging ourselves as such. And of course, I'm not poo-pooing it entirely, but I think there's a nice little middle ground. So the second one, which I think feeds into this, because you spoke about that it wasn't too much of a departure from your life, from the product side and this crossover. You were true to yourself, right? But this idea of build on your passion to create a thought leadership platform. So as you think about ways to become forever employable, right? The first thing that we talk about in the book, that I talk about in the book, is a chapter called Plant Your Flag. When you plant your flag, you're saying, look, I'm going to try to own this domain, and specifically it's going to be this slice of this domain, right? So I'm going to own digital product development. I'm going to own commercial plumbing. I'm going to, whatever it is, and you're going to focus on, commercial real estate, whatever it is, right? We're going to focus on that particular slice of it so that you can leverage that expertise and that experience and your passion for that work to drive those inbound leads and to build that thought leadership platform. So you can provide insight about that world. You can provide advice, content. You can really try to become the person who's associated with that particular slice of content or domain expertise. And what that guarantees is that what comes your way will be folks who are looking for answers to questions that you can answer, that you have that expertise in. I think I know the answer to both of these follow-up questions, but should people who have a job and are in a job be doing this on the side or as a parallel path? And people that are at home right now that have lost their jobs, should they be thinking about doing this?
The short answer is yes. If the continuous chasing, updating of your resumes and chasing of work is getting to you, absolutely. And this is something that I did while employed, right? This is not something that I said, all right, quit my job and, good luck, wife and kids. We'll figure this out, right? It was I'm going to start blogging, right? No, it was, look, the decision was explicit. Let's be clear, right? It was an explicit decision to do this, but it was, there was 100% income coming from my full-time job and 0% income coming from anything else. And the goal was to start to shift that mix until one overtook the other, and I could get rid of the full-time job. And that takes time, and that takes perseverance and consistency.
It's a brilliant point, because there was a plan. You were playing the long game, and it wasn't just, hey, we got a blog. Why? We don't know, because everybody else is blogging. And I think that brings us to the third and final point of the what, which is deploy your value across various channels.
This is super interesting. So I'll tell you a story. I was talking with a group of entrepreneurs recently. They were doing a book club about one of my other books, Sense and Respond, the one I just talked about. It was super interesting because they were restaurateurs. And for them to read Sense and Respond was interesting because they weren't target audience for it, but they got a lot out of it. And so we're doing a book club with them. And they said to me, look, they said, coronavirus, pandemic, lockdown, we're hosed. There's nothing we can do. And I said, okay, I get it, right? The restaurant is the place. And if people can't go to the place, maybe you're host, right? But let's think about this, okay? What is the core value that your restaurant delivered, right? Let's really kind of boil down the essence of that. So it was a tropical feel with great food, right? Or it was good-looking people mingling in a super cool atmosphere, right? Or it was the best burger in Barcelona, or whatever it is, right? What is that core value? Now, let's think about how can you take that core value and redeploy it without the physical space, right? I'm not saying that's an easy challenge, but that's a fascinating challenge, right? How can you recreate a tropical vibe with excellent food without the physical space? I mean, anything from delivery, your packaging, the people who deliver the food, your website. Maybe there's events that you're doing online. I don't know, right? But there's people continuously reinventing themselves now, because the core value, like there's tour companies, right? So no one's traveling, no one's going to Italy to learn how to make pasta. Okay, great. You can still take a pasta making lesson from a chef in Italy, like we're doing right now.
And actually that's a fantastic example, and that's actually what a company called With Locals is doing. So they're using their local tour guides now to give people a taste of Barcelona or Athens, cooking, art, history, etc. So I love that. All right, so beautiful representation of the what. Now let's get into the how. So let's assume people are with you. They're buying the book because, of course, everyone is going to buy the book. Here are 3 hows that you talk about. Number 1, create your own content. And all I'm thinking in my mind before you kick this in is, this is not TikTok, right? TikTok is so derivative. Yeah. It's popular, it's candy right now, but I don't think you're talking about that.
Yeah. So look, this is really, and this is by far the toughest thing, because you've got to decide what your opinion is and how to and how to own that particular opinion. And here's the thing, especially today, right? Any industry that you're in right now, it's going to feel like everything's been said. There's nothing new under the sun. Everyone said everything there is about everything, right? Not true. No one has your story, okay? No one has taken the steps that you have taken to get where you are today. You have a unique perspective on your expertise or your passion. Use that to tell the story. As Joe alluded to, in the after show, I'm going to tell circus stories. I'm going to tell circus stories because I was in the circus, right? No one has that story, I guarantee it. But that got me to where I am today. It was one of the steps that got me here today. So creating your own content based on your story is key to being authentic and having it resonate.
It's funny because not many people know that there were actually 3 people in the original act that were known as Siegfried, Roy, and Jeff. So,
that's right. Yes, that's right.
But it's funny because the second is use it to build expertise and credentials. And actually, we got a LinkedIn comment from Julie Terry that said, "Isn't it hard to know that you're the expert amongst thousands of others who are also in your field?" And I guess the answer already to that is, yeah, but how many of them were part of Siegfried Roy in the circus, right?
That's right. That's right. So look, this is as you decide that you've got this unique perspective and you've got this story, you can start to tell that story in a variety of different ways. Look, you don't even have to write original content. Just participate in existing conversations. Inject yourself into public discussions about things in your industry. Respectfully, right? You can challenge, you can certainly disagree, just do it respectfully and enhance the conversation, right? And what happens there is it takes time and it takes consistency and perseverance, but you start to establish yourself as someone who's got a point of view on this, a specific point of view, and that you are always going to be part of this domain, right? All of a sudden, I'm part of this world, and now I've got a place in it, and that's absolutely key. And that starts to build your credentials, so that when you ask those folks, like let's say you're engaging in conversations on LinkedIn about this, when you ask those folks, hey, listen, now come read a thing that I wrote all by myself. They're like, oh yeah, I've been seeing your comments in here for months, right? This guy's got something to say. I'm going to go see what he's got, what his whole thing is.
And it's exactly what I witnessed in the early days as one of the blogging pioneers, but also how people would constantly and consistently comment on my blog, and I eventually built up a relationship and a rapport with them, such that when they did reach out to me for something, I had time for them. And that's why, in all seriousness, this after show is so awesome, because anybody can come. Anybody, you don't even have to comment. You don't even have to decloak, as I call it. You can just stay with your camera off, on mute, and get access to these unbelievable authors and guests like you. But slowly but surely build or find your place. And I think that just leads us to the final point, Jeff, which is scale it now, right? So scale it to build a continuous stream of revenue, interaction, and community. And I can't help but the word that pops there, rather than monetization for me, which is not there, but the reframe of it is the word consistency, continuous. What do you mean by this? Because it's a lot more profound than it seems obvious.
Yeah. So look, one of the fascinating things, I've been doing a series of stories on my blog. I've started now in anticipation of the launch of the book, called Forever Employable Stories. And the first two are already up on the blog now. And the first two, the first one is with the current guitarist for Whitesnake, which for 16-year-old me was a fairly significant deal. You can see this video. It's a video interview that I do with him, and you can kind of see the expression on my face. And then the second one is with a celebrity photographer named Mathieu Bitton. And Mathieu Bitton's done tremendous work in a variety of different fields and design, and has been a designer. And if you listen to their stories, or if you read my write-ups on their stories, consistency, continuous perseverance is how they made it, right? They decided where to plant their flag, and they said, I am going to be a recognized expert as a rock and roll guitarist, as a celebrity photographer, as a designer, right? As a whatever it is. And then they went after their goals consistently and continuously, right? You hear the same stories from things like Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about how he spent a year making videos about his family's wine business that nobody watched, right? But he was consistent and he was continuous, and eventually the audience comes, right? And so that's what it's all about. And it's tough, but that perseverance is what gets you there.
I love it, and it shows that first of all, love what you do and the rest will follow. Second of all, don't obsess and put the cart before the horse when it comes to monetization. And third is that consistency. It makes me think of CoronaTV. It really does. That I have made the commitment to to do this when we come out of this COVID-19 nightmare. And I'm not worried about audience numbers. I'm worried about quality of audience, and I'm not worried about monetization. I'm concerned about just getting better at my craft, and whatever that revenue is or revenue model, it will come. So it really hits home and rings true. And I wonder, Jeff, how you feel about what I'm doing, right? And CoronaTV, I've been very transparent about this, and I want people. That's why I love the fact that I went red in the face and I messed up and I learned something new, and I know that there are people that might want to start a show. They'll never put their iPhone to the camera again. So I wonder if CoronaTV is a good example of maybe these principles that you're preaching in practice.
Look, first of all, you've got the continuous aspect of it. You've got the perseverance. You've got the consistency. And from what I can see, you're building that community, right? And they're interacting with you. That's key to all of this. And so it's working. It's working as planned. Your master plan is working as planned. You're building a community, but this community clearly you're giving back to this community, and that's what it's all about, right? It's not hey, I'm giving back. Oh, and can you guys pay me for this other thing? It's hey, listen, I'm just going to give back. Right. And if it comes back to me at some point, terrific. And if it doesn't, I'm really enjoying the conversations that we're having. And clearly I'm adding value because there's engaged folks right now that I can see from my perspective here as well.
Yeah, it's my master plan of being a buffoon and incompetent. So I'm succeeding at that. My mantra is lower the bar and then lower it some more. No, but Jeff, this was amazing. And you know, thank you for your inspiration that I ended up putting into my book. So thank you for that. And this is my way of returning the favor. I thought this was great. I would love for you to just take 30 seconds, or if you need more, you can take more as well, just to tell people where they can find you and any plug that you want to make.
Sure. I mean, the easiest place to find me is jeffgothelf.com. Everything's there. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with you. And Forever Employable is available for pre-order on Amazon, except the audiobook. The audiobook's actually out. So if you like audiobooks, you can grab the audiobook, or you can pre-order it on Kindle and print now. Kindle now, it'll be out in about a month, just a little under a month.
So Jeff and I, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it. That was awesome. Jeff is going to be with me now in the Zoom after show. Hopefully you will join us, and I will return tomorrow. Hopefully with a little bit more color, but not red tones in my face. Take care of yourselves and become an expert and start creating content. And remember, consistency. Maybe that's the third superpower. Take everyone, and see you tomorrow. Bye.